Well, after weathering the ice storm yesterday, we got way ahead on our shopping and on our running around for errands. And what it's done is freed up some time of this day. We can get some more buffing done. And it would be nice to get those parts fully buffed, because then we can come out and take some more parts off the bike. And today, while I'm thinking about it, I'll try to be sequencing up how I want to do this, in what order and what sequence, because there really are some advantages to doing it by leapfrogging, in the fact that I don't have all these things down in the cellar that I can't even walk around. So by doing one at a time and finishing up to buffing, it just makes it a little bit easier when you're in a confined work area. And there was a time when I was doing the FCR last year that I really had every table surface full of parts, and it got a little out of control, but in the end it all works out, and in the end, of course, it's done, and we're enjoying every day we can come out here and look at it. And looking forward to the day we can put these dreaded battery tenders away, and instead of doing that, ride the bikes. And that day is coming. Only it's not coming today. And all the restorations for me, they always help me get through a really cold, sometime brutal winter. Sometime when you have to just watch those videos on TV and remember, summer is coming, and today's one of those days. And I thought this was really something special. Yesterday with that ice storm, there's still ice out on our wisteria by the pond. And the next couple days it's supposed to get brutally below zero, so I don't think this ice is going to melt. Anyway, we don't have ice on the pond this morning, so we got to do some cleanup and then go have our coffee. And it is time to get motivated with a strong, hot cup of coffee. Very strong. Yes. And very hot. Now, coming down into my shop early in the morning, and I really look forward to this every morning. I call it the perp walk. I don't know where the hell I got that from, but anyway, I like to look over the parts, try to make a plan for what I want to do today. And I still have one of these to buff out. This would be a good day to do it. Have my little parts ready to buff out. Actually, I could do, the mirrors are now 3 days old. I got the fenders to buff out, and I got the windshield to cut. So I want to, as I look over the parts, see, and this is what happens like with the FCR restoration. This table you couldn't even put a pencil on. There were just so many parts. Well, this bike's a little bit easier. But there's still always something that has to be, and I always look at it the day after the buffing. I rub my hand over it. If I can feel that edge, it means I got to do some more work on it. The carbon fiber at this job, we have more carbon fiber parts, but that is just, this gets me started in the morning. And without this, as this table grows, every day my enthusiasm for the project grows. Now, I don't know if this is going to come out the way I want it to. I put it up on my computer screen. My monitor is a big monitor. But this is from Partzilla. And I'm putting this information up here for a reason. They have pretty much a breakdown of all the motorcycles that probably we'd be working on. So number one, you can order almost all of these parts. There are some that are out of stock. This is the big fairing part for the 650. Now what I'm looking at, I'm making a mental note of where these fasteners are and where the clips are and what parts have to come off at a certain time. Sometimes there's one bolt and you don't know it's there, and you got to take something else off to get to it. Well, I found that you can just come in and look at the schematic on Partzilla for free. And as an example, if you didn't know that last bolt on the bottom you had to take that off, or where the mirrors go on. Now, one of the things when I do pull these are the upper fairing parts, I want to make, well, I've been making these block off plates, but John and I are trying to work on something a little nicer looking. Not sure if we're going to be able to do it, but I thought I'd put on the video. This is a lot of times before I take a part off, I'll come look at the schematic and just, oh yeah, there's a bolt underneath there. Oh, if you look down here, that you know, like when you're putting the mirrors on, oh boy, you've got to take that off first. So it's a useful thing to be able to use, and it's a free thing. You go on to Partzilla and you just look up in this case, Kawasaki, put in the year and the model, and up comes the schematic. And by the way, I've ordered parts from them for almost every bike. And they are dead reliable, and they're a pleasure to do business with. Partzilla. Just thought I'd share that information since that's what these videos are all about anyway. Now, another thing I find of real value by having a big TV monitor on my computer, during the day while I'm working, I can replay videos of, in this case, the nice summer, the meetups we've had, and people I might not have seen in a long time. So I always think one of the objectives of the videos is that during the winter months, you can kind of relive the summer months when we're out riding every day and giving our friends a hard time and seeing people that we, well, here's old Charlie Ducati. And by the way, Charlie, I haven't forgotten, this bike is supposed to be in my collection very soon. So if you decide you're going to dump it for no money. Anyway, no, we've already talked this through. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the videos serve more than one purpose. Yeah, you can learn things, that's cool. And I like to learn things from videos, of course. But I also like to enjoy reliving the times that I've already had. These are great times. And sometimes, hey, there's Luciano, and boy, oh boy. I just having them on my computer. Now, for people that don't know, if you go to my channel, you can search videos. You can actually go back about 10 years. We're coming up on 1,700 videos. And I can't tell you how much fun I have. I play them all day in the shop. I love to relive the good times that we've all had with the A-Team, and sometimes the things that, well, I'm just here as I'm doing this. Here comes Joe Roselli, and he had gotten a new, I remember this day, he had gotten, I think this is when he got his new exhaust system. We went out and did a run-by test, and it's just a wonderful thing to have these videos on my computer. So we're going to start our daily little routine here, and very repetitive sometimes, but there's always some information you can pick up, or some little, I don't know. I seem to pick it up when I watch YouTube videos. Anyway, we start with the Rhino Wet 2000 sandpaper. We've got some parts to sand and buff today, and I don't know how much time we're going to have until I get my marching orders from the boss. So the idea, as always, is to do as much of this with a sanding block. This is a soft block, of course, as much as possible. All the flat areas. Try to avoid the mountaintops. Just the slightest kiss of the sandpaper to any of the mountaintops. That's always good information you can use. And just to keep in mind, this time of year, since our family has, we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas both, Karen has devoted today to cooking some of the traditional Hanukkah stuff, including matzah ball soup, and which our family loves. And having two religions in the family is nice. We get to do double presents and double sandpaper and double gefilte fish and everything. So it makes the holidays a lot more exciting. Anyway, not to belabor the point though, but this is one of the parts. The original bike had that flat black back piece of the fender, and I thought, boy, when I looked at the photos, when I did the photo shoot, that was one of the things I really, really didn't like at all. Now I'm going to try to show this on a close-up because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Right there, there's a little shiny spot. Right out, and I'm not sure you can see it. And you can see I haven't gotten into the valley there perfectly. And what typically happens because of the way this paint dries, there's a little bit of a lip on the edge, which I really have to do by hand. But the whole idea is to get the whole part flat as possible, and every little shiny spot, I'm not sure you can see it, it's right there. There's a little spot there. But when that's gone, because we have plenty of clear on this, then the buffing part of this will be a piece of cake. So here's always the decision I have to make is any part that's flat. This part is flat. Let me just use an example. This part is flat. Anything that's flat, I want to do with the sanding block, soft block. Get it as flat as possible. Then anything here, like if you rub that mountaintop where that crease is, you're going to go right through. If you try to do this part with a block, unless you're really good at it, and I don't count being good, I just have a lot of intensity and a lot of passion, and maybe mediocre, a little bit better than mediocre skills, but I try to be very, very fussy. And the problem is, most people, they want to do something and they really don't want to pay the price. And I remember a saying from Ray and Frank and the guys from my younger days would always say, if there's something you want in life and you don't have it, it's because you don't want it bad enough. And a lot of times with paint, people get halfway through a paint job and then say, this is too much work. Well, I'm not prone to do that kind of stuff. I never like to admit I'm wrong. Anyway, once I dry this up, I'm just looking. Now you can see there's a little shiny spot. I'm going to have to do this by hand. In here, probably better to do by hand. It's good to evaluate each part individually, but eventually I want to have the whole part looking like that and no shiny spots. Now, one of the things I have is over in the drawer that I keep the sandpaper in. I think at one time, and it was a while back, I went down and spent about $300 on sandpaper. And what I did, I bought a sleeve of everything from $600 to $3,000. And I, over the years, have used most of the grits that work real well for this. As an example, if you're sanding Brodak Dope 1200 sandpapers and Gorham Silver Polish, that was the traditional way to bring that up very quickly and easily. Well, that doesn't work on this finish. I've tried. 1200 grit leaves the scratches too deep. This paint does not dry as hard as the Brodak Dope does. So a lot of times what you can do, if you're using a new paint or a new material, you're down at the body shop, you can get 1 or 2 sheets. I know Gavin's will sell 1 sheet at a time. Buy 1 sheet of everything. Try it yourself. An example now, I've tried 2500 grit. It means that then the sanding part of this gets a lot longer and the buffing a little bit shorter. If you go the other way, if you use 1200 grit, 1500 grit, which I've used in the past, what happens is the sanding goes quickly, but then you've got to buff out the 1500 scratches. So the thing you're always looking for is the balance. And with us, with the 4CR and 2000 grit, that balance, it's the best of all worlds. It seems like that's what results in the smallest amount of effort to get the best amount of gloss and smoothness with the least amount of work. And it just takes a lot of patience and sometimes a lot of coffee, to be honest. But we eventually get the part that it's totally flat, no little shiny spots anywhere. No, if there's a run, and we haven't had a problem with runs using the GAVCO, but if you're using a thinner paint or if you're working in warmer weather, runs can be a little more of a problem. But anyway, this is ready for buffing. And of course, once that part is totally block sanded flat with 2000 grit, this is the next step. Now, there are, and I've mentioned this many times, there are many, many good compounds, and I've tried a lot of them, not all of them. Glenn had a really nice system at one time. I don't remember the name of it, but he had special products and special everything, and it worked well. This works well too. So I wanted to get back to buffing here. This is, again, one of the things I think is really worthwhile. These, I just bought a bunch of them yesterday. And every time I go there, they have 3 packs on a rack. I buy them all, and I don't know. I guess we don't need that anymore. Warranty. Can you imagine having a warranty on a buffing pad? That's Harbor Freight for you. You buy a $10 tool, and the warranty plan is $12. I don't know. Anyway, we get a day. I don't like to use these a second day. Now, I know you can, of course. You can take this and you can wash it and you can save it and you can, but I really have to do this little test. I've done this test off camera many times. I've buffed one side with this and then come back with a brand new pad on the other side and it's like, eh. Now, I know a lot of people wouldn't see that. The same way with food. Karen makes an incredible amount of gourmet food. And I think, I can't tell the difference. You know, it's gefilte fish, it's tuna fish. I don't know the difference. But I know one thing, those strombolis from... Now, let's get off the subject. Here's the thing. Yes, if you're, you're looking to really save money, or if I was going to use this, use it on a car. But when I'm going to do a part that I've got hundreds of hours and my passion in, I want a brand new pad every time. And that's part of the cost of doing business. So, without fooling around, the pads go on and off. It's no big deal. I've said this a million times, and this is pretty funny because on YouTube there are several, I mean, they're professionals, the NYC, Ammo NYC, and these people, they're much more skill than I have, more technology. They sell their own products. Imagine if I was selling Windy's 4CR. Now we're down the end of this, and this is going to be a problem because in the holiday season, it's hard to break away here with all the stuff going on in my family. So I like to put on a decent amount. The most, and this is the important part, is you got to get the edge. If you're doing the hood of a car, you put the compound there. If you're doing a motorcycle part or a part with a lot of edges, best to get the compound around the edges here. And I would normally put some of the product, and again, this is a relatively high quality product. This is really, I think in reality, it's not made for hobbyists. It's made for people that are trying to make a living, but I don't know. Anyway, we have a new pad for the next day we work. And another thing, when these pads sit and dry up overnight, they get to where they still buff, but they leave little scratches, and I can see them. To be perfectly fair, there are a million different kinds of compounds, and there's a million different kind of paints, and they harden at different rates based on your shop time and how long you let it sit on the workbench, or up by the heating vent, or if you're in a warm weather climate, cold weather climate. There's just too many combinations to even think about. But there's a simple test. The paint should come up relatively quickly, or you try something else. Now, here's just a simple thing. If you're doing a job like this, and you've got, or a car where you have a lot of parts, you take a spot that you really, not the most conspicuous spot, not the top of the hood or something. And so what you do is you buff a little spot and you see how it looks. Then put another pad on and take some different product, buff it here. Give it a minute or whatever, and then look at them. And the thing to look for is if you see under this is fluorescent lighting here. Under fluorescent lights, if you see scratches, it's not gonna, you can do better. So the compounds, and they do have, I want to mention this too, useful information. There's another number, and I don't have it here. One that's rougher for doing rough cutting. Rough cutting means you're probably not going to sand it carefully like you would. Maybe for doing industrial things, you're buffing out a truck or something. And then there's one that's even finer than this. And when I've used that, it doesn't do a better job. It just takes longer to do the same job. So I've settled on this little formula that I have, and I know it's very simple. And it's like a Vince Lombardi thing. It's a simple thing. Just tackle a guy. There's nothing, concrete. Just mix the concrete. So anyway, let's do a little one in real time. Then I can get busy with the day of buffing. And this is one thing I find, it's just me. I don't say everybody would be like this. I find it relaxing and enjoyable. I don't think everybody does. I like to have a fish pond. I know not everybody does. But again, it's what you enjoy. Now, I know Luciano enjoys pulling engines out of bikes and stuff. I don't really enjoy that. When I've had to do it, and we pulled Glenn's Ducati engine out, it wasn't as much fun as buffing. The reason is very obvious. Because when you're buffing something, you immediately see results. Almost immediately. Now, a lot of times, if I'd be trying to use up the old pad here, the first time I do this, it wouldn't really come out as nice as I'd like. And I know a lot of people think, well, he does this with camera cuts or something. No, we're doing this in real time. If you're bored, you can scratch your ear or something, but I want to show this in real time. Because I know a good amount of the people that subscribe to the video, and I know them personally, and I know they really do want to share this information. I want to share it with them. Now, that's not true of everybody. People that become real good finishers sometime, they don't want to share it. This is real time. So let me see if I can get a little look at what that looks like. It's hard. We're under fluorescent lights, so things don't look as shiny as they should. Or as long as they do. But that is the essence of buffing, and that's why in a matter of 2 minutes, I see something that really makes me happy. Now, obviously, the edges and corners of this I'll have to do by hand. But if you can do that to the hood of your car, and it's a good thing to practice on, especially if, like me, I have an 11-year-old car, practice. Just certain parts of this that I like to support the end of this with my knee when I do the edge. And then there's little parts of this I'm going to have to do by hand, but little by little, this part is coming right up. And what I always like to do, right in the middle of it, just look for any dull spot. There's always little spots. If you can't get them out with the machine, you get them out by hand. Now I can see there's a dull spot right there. This is one of the things I can try, is holding this on an edge. And what I'm doing now is just concentrating on little dull spots. And this is where the patience pays off. Perfect. Now I got a little one here. I've got the same, I'm using the edge of the buffer. Now I'm not heavy-handed either. I try to let the buffer do the work. I don't like to press down on the buffer so hard that you burn the paint. I like to use it like a Dremel tool. Let the polish do the cutting. And this is a process where you just go back and forth until you're happy with the result. And there are no, just like before, there were no shiny spots. Now I don't want there to be any dull spots. And if there are, we'll get them out either with the machine or on the edges here, we'll get them out by hand. Now there are always some spots, and it's usually in the valleys, that the buffer is just not the right shape to get in there. So of course your finger is a lot more conforming. And so this adds a couple minutes to the job, but to have the valleys just as shiny as the rest of the parts, that's one of the little quality touches. And every time I think about it, I think, boy, I would like to have, the objective would be that you look at this on a bright sunny day and you can't find a mistake anywhere. You can't find a scratch or a bug. Now, because we ride the hell out of these bikes, let's be realistic. By the time half of the day is over, they have bugs and dirt and grit and chain lube and who knows what. You run over a turtle or something. But at least we like to start off the ride. I always like to wipe the bike down a little bit before I go for a ride. I always feel like it's like if you go to an event, a party or something, you want to look your best when you get there. Even though when you leave, sometime you got, a little bit different look. One of the tests is always with any paint, if you can see the reflection of your hand or your face or your whatever, your nose in there, and that is the quality of finish that I'd like to have on all the parts on this motorcycle that we're going to refinish. So he now takes his place among the parts that are buffed and the ones that are still to be buffed. Now I don't know, because Karen never tells me till the last minute. I think she keeps it a secret on purpose, how much more time I have here, because we do have errands. We have errands every day this time of year. And as I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure out which part I'd like to do if we do have any more time today. But again, you never know. Now this part is dried a couple extra days, and this is the West resin. I want to see, I do have the time today, and we're definitely going to be doing some errands. But here's the thing, if I can get, even if I just get this wet sanded, it won't even matter. I've got everything ready to go here. Now, because this piece is, we're actually sanding and buffing West resin. We're not sanding paint. These parts have no paint on them at all. So I was very convinced the first day after I made this part, it wouldn't even be worth trying to buff it out, because the resin still seems a little soft. It wasn't quite 24 hours old, and you're in a relatively cold shop. At night, there's no heat in here. So oh, very little heat anyway. So what happens is the resin, as anything two-part, anything that you add catalyst or hardener to, almost anything, there might be an exception, as the temperature warms up, it accelerates and it cures a lot quicker. Paint, if you're painting at 80, 90 degrees, the paint dries so quick you need to put, or you should put, some penetrating thinner, that high penetrating thinner that really would give it a better, not a mechanical bite, a better chemical bite. But anyway, we try to adjust everything to the shop conditions we have here, and we have to go to war with the army we have. Now I see there's still a couple little imperfections. I wanted to mention this, and Scott, who's, he's a highly skilled woodcrafter. He has some of his work, he's told me, is actually in museums, his carved wood. I wish he would send us some pictures of it to share. Anyway, he bought another bike, and he had mentioned to me that one of the tricks they use, and I have seen the trick on YouTube, but I am happy that he shared it. They run a torch over this to kill the bubbles. Yes, I have tried that in the past, and I still had bubbles, so I just poo-pooed that. But the next time I do it, I'll try it again. Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work, and a year later you try it and it works a little bit better, and who knows why. Everything with paint it's like cooking. You make a souffle, and the next day you make a souffle, and it's not the same as the original one. So anyway, just thought I'd share that information. I told Scott I would share it, and I appreciate all the people that send me feedback about these videos, that useful information to share. Okay, we've got that sanded really nice. That resin, and I think this is true of paint too. You let it dry a couple extra days, it just sands out like butter. When you try to sand it and it's still not fully cured, it's always a problem. Now I'm always reminded that this resin, what's important here is there are many motorcycle parts that come, even factory bikes that are expensive, come this way where the carbon is not shiny. And I know I did a lot of parts of Vlad for that we added just a clear finish to the carbon, and I thought it looked a whole lot nicer. Now Karen has just told me it's time for the wonderful part of the day, doing errands. At this time of year, it seems like every day we have errands to do, and she has her 2 art classes, and there's branches down all over town from the ice storm. Now Rutherford is officially known as the borough of trees. Right now it's the borough of branches down and icy trees. Oh, and the trees still have ice on them. It's unbelievable. There was some storm we really ducked a bullet. When it wasn't that long ago, I was pulling into this driveway on the motorcycle. Oh boy, do I miss those days. Boy, this has been a very unpredictable winter. This is such a unique thing. I'm tempted to take some of the bikes out of the garage and do a photo shoot here, but you know what? It's just too damn cold. I gotta go back and buff for a little while. We got a little time left in the day. And when it's this cold and you come back in from the cold, this is the magic bullet. This is the silver bullet. And we have a great system in this house. Karen and I are a team to be reckoned with. We have a great deal. Our marriage has worked great because of it. She cooks and I clean up. What a deal. I think I got the better of that deal. Now I was super curious to see how this part would buff out in the first one we did. This is dry a few extra days. What it means is that we stack the deck, it should buff out the same or better or easier. Time is on your side when you're doing a job like this, that's for sure. And even though the West System resin is not paint, I wanted the durability of the resin because I was afraid if I painted these parts and they got scratched up from the boots or from where, well, they do take a lot of abuse. Even the ones that were on the bike got all chewed up. And I'd have to polish them from time to time. So I'm very curious. Being able to buff out the resin on future projects going to be way to our advantage. That's for sure. Even though you couldn't use this resin to make a muffler, I know the Huntsman resin that you can use to make a muffler. I know you can buff that out. And I know that resin stands the test of time. But this is not an appropriate resin. It's not a high temperature resin like the Huntsman is. Or even Ippon. There's variants of Ippon that are made. Oh boy. Wow. Let's see if you can show this in real time. No camera cuts. Boy, did that come up quickly. Just a question now of buffing the rest of this part out. Seeing how we're doing on time as far as Karen's schedule goes. We've got a lot of stuff. Boy, oh boy. You're doing a multi-religious holiday here. She's cooking up a storm. I'm buffing up a storm. Oh, that came out beautiful now. I'm really happy with the way these came out. And now that I know you can buff this resin, well, it changes a couple of the little plans I had for making other carbon fiber parts. Now we know it's a no-brainer that you can take any part that's carbon fiber, even if you have one of those flat carbon fiber, you can put paint on it. We know that's a no-brainer. But I didn't know for sure until I did this experiment. You can also put a really, really nice finish on that carbon fiber too. And that's West resin. There's no paint at all on that. It is strictly West resin. Now, every resin is a little bit different. And I like to do my own little test since this is the first time we've dealt with the 105 resin and 207 hardener. So that combination, now I want to show something. A lot of people don't know you can do this. If you have bought a carbon fiber part, what I'm going to do is heat the part. And it's probably better if you do this with a heat gun. But the best way to do it is to just put it in boiling water. Somewhere around 200 degrees, almost every resin, including Ippon, has this characteristic. And I know modelers already know this. This is not something modelers are going to be entertained by, but I'm not so sure the motorcycle people all know this, that you can do this. Now what we would do typically is you'd have a model airplane propellers that are almost all Ippon, and then what you would do is warm the part. What I'm doing now, you do it with a hot water or a heat gun or whatever. But I'm sure if I can do this on a decent demo, I'm sure people will be entertained. Now what I wanted to show is, I'm going to hold it there till it cools. I'm not going to spray water on it or do anything to make it cool. Now, this is not true of other materials. It's a little more difficult to do that with aluminum, and I'll show why I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this little demo with using the resin we already have. Now on a propeller, you would be changing the pitch. On this, we're just doing a demo. I can touch it with my hand almost. But what I wanted to show is, when that cools, and it's totally cool, I can pull some of the heat with my fingers. What will happen, it retains the shape. It stays the shape you put it. It has a new characteristic. The molecules have reset. Not everybody knows you can do this. Now, where this is handy on a motorcycle, let's say you buy a part. You buy a fender part or a hugger, or I'm thinking of other little things, and those parts don't line up. Well, you could do this. Just warm them, bend them gently. That might be useful technology, useful information that, well, I know the model airplane people use it all the time. I used it almost every time I made a change to the trim of the airplane. So anyway, that's good. And that usually works with, I shouldn't say all resin. I hate to say that because there may be one that doesn't. But the fact that it retains that new shape is one of the characteristics you can use when you design up a carbon fiber part. And let me show why I think that might be a useful thing for us to have. Now you can see the original part has a little bit of an angle on that tab, and a little bit of I don't know if that's there just for cosmetic. I looked to see if this was going to be similar, but what that's going to allow me to do if I want to at some point in time, just heat this part, make some kind of a buck with 2 pieces of wood like a vise and put a bend, or I can put a bend in that. Or what it is, it gives me a lot of choices. Now if I did that with aluminum, yeah, I could put it in a vise, I could put this into a buck, and then I'd have to do a totally repolished thing. Well, I'm not so sure we're going to do that. I like the look of it flat, but you never know, that can change on a moment's notice. So it's always handy to know the material you're using. Now I would assume, now that I know this totally, that resin is going to act very similar to the resins we've used in the past. And that really frees me up to design future carbon fiber parts, not only for this project, but for all future projects. Right, I look at all this carbon fiber. Now, I did this as one final test to see if I could see which buffed out better, the resin or the paint. I think it's a tie. So we had a great day. I'm always happy when I add to my parts that are, I call them ready to put back on a motorcycle. This one's ready. We got the back half of the fender to do. Maybe you haven't noticed, but I've been trying to work with the oldest parts, trying to let the new parts cure out, and of course saving the biggest parts, like the big fairing parts, for last. Just the way I like to work. I'm not sure why. But anyway, I hope you picked up some information. That information about carbon fiber is for real. That's a real thing. And now that we can paint that resin and we can buff that resin, that's something I will be using in the future when I think about things I want to do for motorcycles. Anyway, again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.